1995, Michael Hutchence picks up the phone and calls Andy Gill, the legendary guitarist from Gang of Four. Michael has an idea. He wants to record a solo album, something darker, more personal, more experimental than anything he's done with INXS. "Do you want to come play some guitar with me?" Michael asks. Gill says yes. 5 minutes later, the phone rings again. It's Michael calling back. "What I really meant was, do you want to come to the south of France and write this album with me?" Over the next 2 years, 1995, 1996, and into 1997, Michael records 13 songs with Gill and producer Danny Saber. The songs are dark, intensely personal, brutally honest about the custody battle with Bob Geldof, the tabloid harassment, the pressure of fame, the search for redemption. One song is titled "Don't Save Me From Myself." Michael sings the chorus over and over, a plea, a warning, a prophecy. Another song, "Breathe," is recorded in Los Angeles just days before Michael flies to Sydney. The chorus haunts, Michael repeating the phrase, "keep breathing," like a mantra, like he's trying to convince himself to survive. On November 22, 1997, 2 days after recording that song, Michael Hutchence is found dead in room 524 of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Sydney. He's 37 years old. The solo album won't be released until December 14, 1999, over 2 years after his death. When people finally hear it, they're stunned, because Michael had been singing about his despair all along. He'd been documenting his decline in real time. He'd left a musical diary of a man falling apart, and nobody had heard it until it was too late. This is the story of Michael Hutchence's solo album, the darkest songs he ever recorded, and the chilling premonitions hidden in the music nobody heard while he was alive. To understand why Michael wanted to record a solo album, you need to understand where he was in 1995. INXS had just finished touring for their 1993 album Full Moon, Dirty Hearts. The album had underperformed. Grunge and alternative rock had taken over. INXS suddenly felt like an 80s relic. The band decided to take a break. The other members, Tim Ferriss, Andrew Ferriss, John Ferriss, Kirk Pengilly, Gary Beers, wanted to spend time with their families, to step away from the spotlight for a while. But Michael couldn't stop. He needed to create. He needed to express things INXS couldn't or wouldn't express. The darkness he felt, the anger at Bob Geldof, the frustration with the tabloids, the sense that his life was spinning out of control. Michael had always been a fan of Gang of Four, the British post-punk band that combined angular guitars with political lyrics. When he decided to do a solo album, Andy Gill was the first person he called. Gill was skeptical at first. He'd seen Michael on television and admired him as a performer, but they'd never met. Then Michael made the pitch. "Come to my house in the south of France. Let's spend 5 months writing together." Gill agreed. In 1995, he traveled to Michael's home in Roquefort-les-Pins, France. Michael had set up a small home studio. They brought in computers, a mixing desk, microphones. For 5 months, they lived together, wrote together, recorded together. Gill later described the experience. Michael wanted to make something artistically ambitious, not just polished pop songs, something that went beyond people's normal perception of him. The album they began creating was darker than anything INXS had ever done. Heavier guitar, industrial sounds mixed with orchestral arrangements, and lyrics that were deeply, painfully personal. Michael and Gill recorded 10 songs together in France and London through 1995 and 1996. Then Michael brought in Danny Saber, the producer from Black Grape, to add more tracks. Michael loved Saber's work on Black Grape's 1995 album, It's Great When You're Straight, Yeah. He thought Saber could help push the sound even further. Saber joined the sessions in late 1995 and continued working with Michael through 1996 and into 1997. They recorded 3 additional songs in Los Angeles in November 1997, just days before Michael flew to Sydney for the INXS 20th anniversary tour rehearsals. One of those final songs was called Breathe.
Michael recorded it on November 20th, 1997. 2 days later, he was dead. By the time Michael died on November 22nd, 1997, the album was essentially finished. 13 songs, nearly complete mixes, guest appearances from Joe Strummer of The Clash, Gail Ann Dorsey, backing vocals from Denise Johnson and Bernard Fowler. But one song, Slide Away, was unfinished. Michael had recorded his vocals, but he wanted to add more. After his death, Gill asked Bono from U2, who had been Michael's friend, to finish the song. Bono wrote an additional verse and completed the vocals. The words he added captured his grief about Michael's death. When the album was finally released in December 1999, over 2 years after Michael died, the response was immediate and emotional, because the song titles alone told a story of a man in crisis. Don't save me from myself. Slide away. Breathe. Let the people talk. Put the pieces back together. Get on the inside. Fear. These weren't just songs. They were warnings, prophecies, a man documenting his own decline. Let's go through the most chilling songs one by one. The album opens with a brooding funk tune, sometimes called Song Number 1, but officially titled Let Me Show You. It features backing vocals from Joe Strummer. The words are dark from the first line, with Michael singing about having his finger on the trigger and asking who could take it. Andy Gill said the song captures the pressure Michael felt constantly, the sense that he was always performing, always on display, always judged. Let the People Talk was about tabloid harassment. Michael and Paula Yates were relentlessly attacked in the British press. Every aspect of their relationship was scrutinized, mocked, sensationalized. Gill explained, "The media, particularly the tabloids, have this insatiable appetite for devouring the celebrity lifestyle. It's about Michael's life and how he was hounded and how Paula was continually attacked in the press. The song references how Michael felt the intrusions never stopped, how privacy was impossible, how the scandal mattered more to tabloids than truth. Fear is even more explicit. Michael sings about being full of sin, about there being no secrets he hasn't done. The words reference kissing warm knives as they dig for your soul, about scandals where they don't let the truth get in the way. Danny Saber said, "Listening to these words now, this is the most ironic album ever." But the most disturbing song, the one that makes everyone who hears it uncomfortable, is Don't Save Me From Myself. The song is dark, intense, and relentless. Michael sings about not keeping time, about needing to get out. And then the chorus hits, Don't Save Me From Myself. He repeats it over and over, dozens of times throughout the song. It's not a plea for help, it's a rejection of help. It's Michael saying, leave me alone, let me self-destruct, don't save me. Andy Gill later said he couldn't listen to the song after Michael's death. It was too painful, too prophetic, because Michael had been singing exactly what he would eventually do, refuse salvation. The week before Michael died, Danny Saber was with him in Los Angeles. They were finishing the final songs. Michael admitted he was reluctant to return to Australia for the INXS tour. He didn't want to go, but he felt obligated. I think Michael was the kind of guy who was always trying to be everything to everybody, Saber said. And then there's Breathe. Breathe was one of the last songs Michael ever recorded. Saber and Michael worked on it in Los Angeles in November 1997, just days before Michael flew to Sydney. The song has a haunting quality, sparse production, echoing guitar, and a chorus where Michael repeats one phrase over and over, keep breathing. Like a mantra, like he's reminding himself, like he's fighting to stay alive. On November 20th, 1997, Michael Hutchence finished recording Breathe in Los Angeles. On November 22nd, 1997, Michael Hutchence stopped breathing in a Sydney hotel room. After Michael's death, Andy Gill had possession of all the recordings, but he couldn't work on them. He was grieving. Danny Saber was grieving. Everyone involved was devastated. It wasn't until mid-1999, nearly 2 years later, that Saber finally began completing the mixes. Gill had asked Bono to finish Slide Away. The album was titled simply Michael Hutchenson. The release date was set for December 14, 1999. When the album was announced, MTV described it as containing eerily prescient songs that offered insight into Hutchenson's troubled life. The first single, A Straight Line, premiered on Australian radio on September 13, 1999. It immediately became the #1 most added record in Australia. The album debuted at number 3 on the Australian charts and went gold within weeks. Critics were stunned. Rolling Stone wrote that Michael had been as serious about his craft as he was intoxicated by rock star living. They called the album a record of quality and distinction. Pop Matters scored it 8 out of 10, writing, "This autobiographical album resonates beyond its sad, faintly kinky pedigree." But the reviews all noted the same thing. The words were chilling. Knowing what happened to Michael, listening to these songs felt like reading a suicide note set to music. One reviewer wrote, "Some have felt there were hints of suicidal depression throughout the album. Listening now, it's impossible to ignore."
Andy Gill gave interviews about the album in late 1999 and 2000. He was candid about how painful it was to listen to the finished work. Michael's life was in turmoil, and the songs reflected his misery and sense of hopelessness, Gill said. "It's a great record, darker and more interesting and ambitious than anything else he ever made, but I can't listen for long. It's infused with premonitions of what would happen, the thoughts of a man who has contemplated suicide more than once." Gill revealed that during their recording sessions, Michael would talk about his struggles, about Bob Geldof weaponizing the custody battle, about feeling trapped, about the tabloids destroying any chance at happiness with Paula. "It was the one thing that really got him down," Gill said about the custody situation with Geldof. "He would go on about it, and it seemed like he felt Geldof still treated Paula as his property and was going to great lengths to make it difficult for Michael and Paula to have any life and happiness." On the night before Michael died, November 21, 1997, he reportedly argued with Bob Geldof by phone. The subject was Geldof's last-minute decision not to allow Paula's 3 daughters to spend Christmas vacation in Australia with Michael and Paula. That argument, Gill believes, was the final trigger. Everything Michael had been singing about, the powerlessness, the rage, the sense that Bob Geldof was deliberately destroying his happiness, came to a head that night. And the next morning, Michael was dead. Danny Saber was more direct in his assessment. "I think he did commit suicide," Saber said in a 2000 interview. "I think he was in a bad spiral of depression that was very, very chemically enhanced. I don't think the reasons for his depression were enough to tip him over the edge, but I think the drink-drug aspect of it was the major player here." Saber pointed to the combination of Prozac, alcohol, and cocaine that Michael was using. Combined with the traumatic brain injury from Copenhagen in 1992, the custody stress, and the tabloid harassment, Michael's brain chemistry was profoundly disrupted. The solo album, Saber said, was Michael's attempt to express what he couldn't express anywhere else: the rage, the despair, the sense that he was drowning. "We had a lot of fun on the road to destruction, though," Saber added sadly. So could the album have saved Michael? If someone had heard these songs before November 1997, would they have intervened? The truth is, people did hear some of the songs. Martha Troop, Michael's manager, heard them. She wrote Michael a letter saying she was very worried about him. But, as Michael's sister Tina later revealed, the response was to keep pushing, keep touring, keep working. The album could wait. Andy Gill had heard the songs. He knew Michael was struggling, but Gill wasn't a therapist. He was a musician. His job was to help Michael create, not to save him. Danny Saber had heard Breathe just days before Michael died.
But Saber was in Los Angeles. Michael was flying to Sydney. By the time anyone realized how serious things were, it was too late. The solo album wasn't released until December 1999. Michael had been dead for over 2 years. When people finally heard "Don't Save Me from Myself" and "Breathe" and "Let the People Talk," they understood. Michael had been screaming for help. Or maybe screaming that he didn't want help. It's hard to tell.
Either way, the music documented everything. The anger, the despair, the premonitions. And nobody had heard it while there was still time. Today, Michael Hutchence's solo album is considered a cult classic. It's darker and more experimental than anything INXS ever did. It showcases Michael's vocal range and his ability to convey emotion that INXS's polished pop rock sometimes buried. But it's impossible to listen to without thinking about what came next. Every song feels like foreshadowing. Every lyric about despair and escape and not wanting to be saved reads like a preview of Room 524. Andy Gill said it best. "I can't listen for long. It's infused with premonitions of what would happen." Bono, who finished Slide Away after Michael's death, rarely speaks about the album. But in a 2000 interview, he said, "Michael was my friend. Working on that song after he died was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I could hear in his voice that he was in pain, and I couldn't help him." The solo album sold well in Australia and Europe. It went gold. The singles got radio play. Musically, it was a success. But as a cry for help or a warning that help wasn't wanted, it failed, because by the time anyone heard it, Michael Hutchence was gone. In his final recordings, made just days before his death, Michael sang about breathing, about keeping going, about staying alive, and then he stopped. If this story moved you, please subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to understand that art can be a window into suffering. Have you ever heard a song that seemed to predict tragedy? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more untold stories about the messages we miss until it's too late.